Today we're going to have a look at the smallest mechanical keyboard that I've checked out on the channel so far. This is the Vortex Core 40% mechanical keyboard, and since we have a lot to cover, it's going to be a long one, so I'll put in some timestamps in the description. The box is nice and small. We have the Core branding on top, and that's it for the outside, and it opens up, which is held by some magnets, and we have the keyboard itself. Underneath is the micro USB cable and a little user manual. And here's the keyboard itself, and this thing is absolutely tiny. If we put it back into its foam holder thing, it's the approximate size of a 60% keyboard like a Poker or an An Pro, which to normal people is already ridiculously small. So yeah, it's only just the 40% keyboard with 47 keys. This is relative to a standard full-size keyboard with a numpad, which we refer to as 100%. And that's basically what the product name implies. It's the very core of the keyboard in size and functionality, although there are 30% users out there who I really do admire. The keyboard is just short of 25cm wide, 7.5cm deep, and a tad short of 3cm tall with the keycaps and feet. The design follows the core philosophy. From the top view, all we see is the keys. There's no external border or anything, so there's no top shell, which is the usual case anyway for smaller keyboards, and therefore it has a floating key design, so we can see the switches exposed from the sides. The keycaps on top are sweet looking DSA profile keycaps. These have a cool classy beigey color to them, and these are dye sublimated legends in a really clean and simple typeface, which I really do like, and it does give it a premium look. The base is stunning as well and is CNC'd aluminum. It's smoothly anodized in this dark grey colour, which is nice and neutral. The shape is straight up rectangular with slightly filleted corners, and the bottom edges are slightly chamfered as well, but all of this is so minimal. On the bottom we have a small metal plate with all the info. Again, just a nice touch rather than having a sticker there. There's 4 small rubber feet for non-slip, and notice that there isn't any flip-up feet, and this is pretty common on 60% boards and smaller boards like this, and since there isn't any natural inclination to the case, as well as the DSA profile keycaps, it's just the straight up flat typing surface. But for the most part, they're not really needed because the core is so small vertically. These are uniform in size except for the F and J homing keys. These are what we would refer to as deep dish keys because they have a deeper scallop, and also the convex spacebar keycaps. The rest of them have a gentle spherical scoop, and I do find DSA keycaps kinda nice to type on, but your mileage may vary. These are also much shorter than standard OEM profile keycaps, however the width of the top of the keycap is still the same, but the depth is slightly shorter. They're also quite thick at 1.5mm. So let's have a look at the layout. The alphas are normal. We do get one column cut off on the right hand side, so we're missing the dedicated / or question mark key and the apostrophe key, and also the square and curly bracket keys with the delete key replacing one of them. Next to the delete key we have the backspace key, which is usually on the row above, and I quite like having the backspace a bit closer, although it did take me a bit of getting used to. The right shift key is a smaller 1.25 unit key, and next to that is the FN1 key. The bottom row has a flurry of keys. On the flanks are 2 standard control keys, a bunch of 1U keys including the FN and PN keys, and of course our split spacebar. The top left corner is a bit different as well. We have the escape key where the tab key would usually be, and the caps lock key / tab key under that. However, with the latest firmware at this time, which is version 1.04.01, the caps lock key has been changed to the tab key by default. And this does make sense since we can use our shift key for uppercase letters, but I'm personally a caps lock kind of guy. So they've tried to pack in as much as possible. Some will ask why they still have large keys. Well, in order to keep a standard staggered design, we have to somehow offset the keys, otherwise we will get an ortholinear keyboard such as the plank. But is it still usable? If you're coming from a full-size keyboard, then it may take some time to get used to. I've used 60% boards in the past, so I'm familiar with utilizing different layers, but this takes it just a touch further. Looking at the keyboard, we have 3 keys which access the different functions. We have our FN1 key. Notice how it's colored red. This will combine with the keys with the red lettering on them. So this is how you access the function row keys like from F1 to F12, but more importantly our numbers. And this is one of the things that was really hard for me to adjust to. This is quite user determined, but this was terrible for my workflow. Many times for digit input, I'm using my mouse, like when I'm using CAD to input values, or even using video editing software. It's extremely annoying and inefficient for me to have to let go of my mouse and then use it to hold the FN1 key down. What we can do though is set up a layer with dedicated number keys, but it does get tedious having to constantly swap between layers. For general use, like typing up this review and putting in numbers from time to time, I found that it was fine and I did adapt to it. There's also the apostrophe, which took some getting used to since I do quite a bit of writing. We can also combine the FN1 key and the shift key to access what would normally be the secondary function of these keys. So that includes the exclamation mark and the @ symbol, and all those other ones, and the important question mark key. These, however, are not shown on the keyboard itself, so you have to remember where everything is. We then have our normal function key. Notice that it's colored blue, and these will combine with the blue printed keys. So we have a bunch of media keys with volume controls. We also have our nav cluster there, so page up and page down, home and print screen and all that, as well as the arrow keys are there. There are also time delay settings. However, probably the most important feature is that it allows you to switch between the customizable layers. There are 3 customizable layers marked with L1, L2, and L3. LO is the default layer which cannot be customized. If we activate layer 1, a red LED will shine, layer 2 is green, and layer 3 is blue. And that brings us to the PN key. This is the programming key that allows us to customize each key to our liking. This is pretty much like the 60% poker keyboards. There is no software or GUI, so everything is programmed and stored on board. So first we have to pick our layer. I'll choose layer 1 by pressing the FN key and the L1 key together. So now it's lighting up red. To enter the programming mode, we press the FN key and the right control key, and the right spacebar will light up a solid blue. We can then choose the key that we want to program. I'll pick the right control key. The blue light will then start flashing, and I want to assign the right control key to the right directional arrow key. So remembering our combinations from before, I will press the FN key and the I key, and then we press the PN key, and then to exit the programming mode we press FN and right control. And now I have my right control key as a right arrow key, and I can continue to do this on the Shift, Alt and menu keys to have dedicated arrow keys. But that was just an example because we can actually do the same thing in the default L0 layer by pressing Windows, left, Alt and right space. And I love my dedicated arrow keys, so this was a great option. The FN layer can also be programmed. For example, function and E will be mute by default, but that can be changed. If we want, we can move the FN or PN key to another position, however it can only move to these 5 keys at the bottom. However, we can do even more. We can string together up to 32 keystrokes on one key, so I could automatically type out a sentence. So let's assign the left Alt key to say good morning, how are you? We do the same as before. Remember, this does include the space, however it does not include the 3 keys needed to create the question mark symbol that will only count as 1. This has its use cases, whether it be for gaming or professional work programs, and that's over 3 layers as well, so it's packing all it can with just onboard programming, which is more than enough. However, that's what limits it for programmability, whereas the minivan, which is another 40% keyboards, has a few more options. Since it's so small, it gives you all the flexibility that comes with a small package. There's more space on your desk for whatever you want to do, but it also brings your mouse closer to the center for better arm positioning, and of course giving you more space for gaming. It's also ultra portable, making an awesome travel keyboard. Now to the disassembly. This is probably one of the easiest keyboards to disassemble. Under a few keycaps, there's just 5 Phillips head screws, and it comes apart just like that. Here's the CNC'd aluminium base. It's just a basic hollow rectangle with no reinforcement or ribbing, which it doesn't need anyway. You can't see it on camera, but I can see little swells or circles on the inside caused by the router bit, and the aluminium is about 2mm thick. But this base is super light. It's actually the metal backplate that gives it that heft. It's a solid steel backplate which is about 1.5mm thick, and we can tell it's steel because it's magnetic and my screwdriver sticks to it. Aluminium, on the other hand, is a non-ferrous metal containing no iron, so it's not magnetic. Without the base, the keyboard is 275 grams, but with the base, it's just 407 grams, meaning that the base is only 132 grams. Having a look at the PCB, and it's nicely packed. We have our diodes for each switch, and having a look closer we actually have spots for SMD LEDs, and there are actually some mounted on the caps lock and stuff. However, the switches I have solid black casings, and there's hardly a gap at all for the light to shine through, as these black casings are more suited for the through hole LEDs. However, the others I've seen have clear casings which I think will be ready for RGB lighting. So these are Cherry MX black key switches, but they also come with the other Cherry MX colors of course. And the combination of the keycaps and the dense build made it sound a bit quieter and have a bit of a lower pitched tone, which I did enjoy. There is only one stabilized key on the right spacebar, which makes everything smoother and quiet. So overall, it was an interesting experience. This is my first 40% keyboard, so I'm not well experienced with these. I have a couple of 60% keyboards, but even those I don't use as often as a 65% keyboard. So really most of my time is with a pretty standard keyboard that doesn't require using a function key for everything. And how good this keyboard will be is really dependent on a person's use case. If you're punching numbers all day, then of course this wouldn't be great. For me, when using CAD and video editing software, it wasn't a good experience to have to use two hands. For gaming, I mostly play FPS, and it took some adjusting, like solely using the scroll wheel on the mouse, and actually making use of my extra keys on the mouse, which was actually a good thing in the end. Personally, it's just too small for me. I dislike having to do function combos for even simple stuff, but it's absolutely possible because there's a heap of people using 40% keyboards and it works for them and they love it. Other than that, it's a super sleek looking keyboard with the two-tone DSA keycaps and the super minimal aluminium base. The quality is great and what's expected from Vortex. It's definitely not for everyone, but it does give you every opportunity to make it what you want it to be, and it's up to the user to get everything they can out of the keyboard. If you're still looking for a compact keyboard but can't handle this, then Vortex still have their ever popular Poker 3.